Let me share my screen. Okay, good evening, everyone, to you from my end, and good evening to you all. My name is Tom Smith, Unimoke, and I'm a PhD candidate here at the University of Sydney, studying chemical engineering. And I'll be presenting to you on this topic, crafting a winning academic SOP/CV. Okay, so the intention is to clearly distinguish between what an academic CV is and what actually makes an academic CV outstanding, and what are the key features that probably you could add to your CVs that could make you a better candidate for your PhD applications and some scholarship considerations. Okay, so we can, is someone talking? Okay, I see that as a distraction. Okay, so let's proceed. So to begin, I would begin by saying that there are key significant features that actually makes a CV good. And in fact, what exactly actually makes a CV a good CV? Is there really anything as a good CV and a bad CV? Do we really think a CV is good by appearance or design or length, or is it style, or what exactly actually makes a CV good, or what makes a CV outstanding? So by simple definition I have put forward here is that a good CV is a comprehensive document that includes all the relevant information about your experience, skills, and qualifications that you've done, where you have done them, and when you have done them, and your achievements, your roles, your responsibilities, what you have undertaken, and your skills and examples of where you have applied them. So if a CV has a criteria, like for instance, this CV is to convey certain information to an audience and it's able to do exactly what it was meant to do, then it's a good CV. But a CV that is not a good CV is a CV that fails to address the key features that is expected to, meaning that if I look at your CV, I should know who you are, I should know what you have done, I should know what skills you possess, and if you are a good candidate for me or not as a recruiter, because the recruitment process is spending less than 3 to 5 minutes on your CV. And then they want to quickly get as much information about you as possible in just 3 minutes. They don't have the time to read your CV in detail. So it becomes important how you structure your CV. It becomes important what are the key things that you address in your CV. It becomes important if your CV is void of distraction or it's not void of distraction. So for instance, let's look at what a CV should look like. A CV should be simple. Simplicity is the key thing to winning any CV. We don't want ambiguous colors. A CV that is winning is a CV that is very, like, you don't want your audience to focus on the design of your CV. So instead of putting complex design on the CV, make it simple, plain black and white. Bold the headings that are needed to be bold, and then the ones that are to be italicized. Like, what do you want to emphasize on? If you want to emphasize on your your CGPA or probably your skill that is very valuable to that particular field, then that's the one that you should bold. That is what you should be italicized. You should italicize what you want your focus to be. What you want them to know about you are the things that you should highlight or bold on your CV. So if you don't want them to know some certain thing, just leave it. But then the design should be simple, and the purpose is, what is this purpose of this CV? Is it for a job application? Is it for a scholarship application? Or is it for a general admissions? They are all differences. If it's for a scholarship application, what is the scholarship looking for? You must know your audience. You must know what these people are looking for. And if I have it, and if I don't have it, how can I position myself to make them know that I have what they're looking for? Your CV must be tailored to a specific application, to a specific purpose, and to a specific audience. So if you are applying for a job application, it's totally a different thing. You must know what the job are looking for, and then you give them what they are looking for on your CV. And that must be simple, as straightforward as possible, such that they are able to see that in 3 minutes or 2 minutes, as the case may be. And appropriateness, that is the same thing. It must be appropriate with the purpose for which it is meant to. So you can't have a general CV for every single thing. For instance, you have one CV and you use that same CV for apply for a job. You use the same CV to apply for admission. You use the same CV to apply for a scholarship. It's not going to work, because every single organization, every So all of them cannot be looking for the same thing. Therefore, you must give each person what they deserve and what they are looking for. That is how it will position you and make you different from other candidates that apply to that very position. Okay. So I would say the length of a CV does not necessarily matter. The length of a CV is dependent on how much of experience you have. If you are an undergraduate student who just graduated and you are applying into a PhD or a master's program, normally we don't expect you to have, numerous experiences or numerous things. Therefore, a 2-page CV is absolutely fine. 1.5 page is absolutely fine. But if you have left school for a long time and you are working probably and you have more robust experience, there is no problem if your CV is 6 pages. There is no problem if your CV is 4 pages because you have more things to share. Therefore, the length of your CV does not necessarily matter. But then what matters is it must be clearly segmented into different sections and then appropriately and straightforward as possible. Okay, then the style, of course, it doesn't matter. I have emphasized on this. Simplicity is the key thing to win it. Make it as simple as possible. So the structure of an academic CV. An academic CV differs from a CV that you apply to a job. If you're applying to a job, it's different. If you're applying to a company, it's different. But if you are applying to an academic position or you're applying for, in this case, graduate school, it is an academic CV that is expected of you. And what are the key features of an academic CV? First of all, we want to see your education or your personal details. Personal details, purely your name, your address. And if you have a public record like OSID or Google Scholar or what's public profile like LinkedIn that can help them know more about you, you include it. That's it. We don't need your village address, your marital status, your local government of origin, your whatever state of origin. They are not important for graduate school. We don't care about that. Go straight to the point. Tell us your name and your public record and your mobile contacts or your email address. Those are the key things that should be on the head of your CVs. As simple as that, that's all. After that, the next thing we want to see is your education. What have you done? Mostly for master's or for bachelor's degree, you should tell us your key modules that are closely aligned to what are you applying for. For instance, I'm applying for a master's program in process control, and I have had my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. So if I have to apply for a master's in process control, what are the key courses that I took during my undergraduate that are closely related to process control? You must include those ones, right? And then what grade did I graduate with from bachelor's degree? You can include your CV you can include your CGPA in terms of percentage or in terms of the grade points. It's fine. Then for PhD applicants, it's very important for you to include what your dissertation thesis was, or what is the topic that you have worked on, what research did you do? So in addition to say you have a bachelor's degree in process control from University of Calabar, you graduated with a second class upper, the year of graduation is 2022, and the CGPA is 4.01. Then your topic of research, what did you do? You must include the topic of research in that section. And if there are any significant achievement that you achieve, like for instance, if you're the best graduating student, if you receive any award, if you do that, it's okay for you to include that in that section. Structure that as a section. If you don't want to take it to a different section called awards, if you mind, you can also have a different section where you call honors and awards, and you can include whatever award that you were given within that degree. Otherwise, it's fine. Then your interests or your work experiences. In this case, if you're applying for a PhD or you're applying for maybe a scholarship that requires you to write an essay where you have to talk about something about your research interest, it's fine. You can just highlight the research areas that you are interested in. For instance, I'm interested in catalysis, I'm interested in computational analysis, I'm interested in force fields, or I'm interested in whatever. Just highlight them. It's okay. Not so much, but one line or so, it's fine. The next section is experiences. Experiences, you can segment your experiences into different sections. You segment your experience into research experience, into work experience in terms of maybe professional work or non-professional work experiences, your internship experiences, your project experiences, your laboratory experiences. Yeah, all of these are experiences that you can actually highlight. For instance, research experience, what research have you done? Work experience, where have you worked? What did you do? what was your responsibility? Are there any significant achievements from your work that you can include in your CV that will make you outstanding or that will make people know that you are valuable? These are the information that you should include in such section. Internship experience. Have you had any internships? Did you do an internship somewhere and did you learn something? Which equipment did you learn? How did you do it? What your contributions was? Clearly highlight them in simple words where, because just 3 minutes is enough to go through your CV. So they're not going to have the details to read everything. So therefore, you must be as concise as possible. Just a single line of expression of what you did is enough. Okay. Then project experience for undergraduate students is very important. What projects did you do? And what did you do? What your achievement was? Did you learn anything substantial from your project? We must learn to include these sections. Okay, you did a research. Most of you, your project or your undergraduate project is the only research experience that you even have. Okay, so you can highlight key things that you learned during your project in terms of maybe it's presentation, maybe it's an analysis that you learned, maybe it's an instrument that you had used, or maybe it's something. It's good to include it and then highlight the key achievement or what you actually learned from such. And then you have laboratory experiences. If you have had any lab experiences, it is important because we want to see that, okay, at least you know how to measure pH, at least you know how to use some equipment. So even if you don't have any experience at all, it's okay, but it's good for you to include them, okay? And then your honors and award. If you choose to include your awards under your education, it's fine. You can ignore this section. If you choose not to, you can have it as a separate section and then you mention what awards you were given or where have you been honored or any. It mustn't be academic. You could be honored as a president of the departmental president. You could be honored as a university student union government president. All of those social or whatever awards that you had given, even if they are not directly related to academics, it's important for you to include them because it shows that you are responsible. It shows that you have done something substantial for community development. Okay, then your skills. Here also, there are various skills that you can include. And this is where most of the people that I review CV for, I see people get it wrong. They just mention skills. They go and mention Microsoft Word, MS PowerPoint, Microsoft this, and then that's all. That is not just all your skills. Those ones, you can classify them as your IT skills, right? You can classify your skills into research skills, non-research skills, IT skills, interpersonal skills, organizational skills, leadership skills, teamwork. These are all skills. They are important to completing a graduate program because you are required to do, most of these things are needed in you for you to successfully finish graduate school. So they are skills that if you add to your CV, they can actually make you outstanding. If you have any conferences you have attended, list them. Presentations you have presented, it's good to include them and not just include presentations, include the title of the presentation, where you presented it in terms of the conference and the dates or the year where you had presented such, it's important. Then your research publications, if you have any publications, make sure you include them. If you don't have, it's fine. You could include your projects here as part of your publication or as part of your research. If it is already published, you put it as published. If it is unpublished, you can put it unpublished research. It's fine. Voluntary community development. Yes, it's very important. If you have done something in your community, in your church, in your any organization, it's also important to include it, but very briefly, okay? And then other certifications like maybe online courses, you have learned how to, you learned React and Python programming from online resources. You can include those ones here as your certifications that you have learned. You have learned one or two things from internet. You can also, if you have any certifications with them, you can also include them in this other session. Okay, so these are like the key sessions that should be in an academic CV. So examples of skills that I was talking about, which people actually ignore, you can include these skills. You have adaptability as a skill. It's a skill because during graduate school, you definitely need to learn to be adaptable. You are leaving your country to a different country. You must become adaptable. You must immediately integrate into the culture or wherever you're moving into, knowing fully well that you're going to be far from your family. So adaptability is a skill that is very important to anybody wanting to migrate from wherever you are to another country, okay? And then in this case, you can expand like, what is the breadth of interest an ability to move rapidly between topics. Like you should be willing to switch ideas. For instance, you are interested in studying process control and you are given admission and your supervisor wants you to do catalysis instead. You must be able to immediately accept that, okay, even though I wanted to study process control, but my supervisor is wanting me to do catalysis instead. You should also be open-minded to immediately receive the area of catalysis and start working on it, right? So that is a skill you can actually include on your CV. Ambition. You must be ambitious, right? Because this is going to be your standard. If you are not ambitious, you might not complete your research successfully because your supervisor will not need to remind you every day for you to work on your project. So you must be self-motivated and ambitions for you to pursue whatever you have come to pursue abroad, okay? So the aim is to improve and the aim is to decipher this difficult goal. So you must you must be an ambitious person that you have standard, you are able to set difficult goals and achieve them, okay? And then analysis / research / attention to details. These are all important skills that we want in graduate school. You must pay attention to details. You must be able to simplify complex problems into simple parts, right? And then independence / confidence. It is also a skill. You need confidence, you need independence. You are coming as an independent researcher. Anything you don't know, you must be willing to learn it on your own and not necessarily waiting for someone to teach you. You must take initiative to take actions. And if you have any intuition to do anything, you must also have the zeal and the zest to make sure that what you want to do is doable and you do it. Communication is a skill. Oral, written communication, they are all skills. Clarity of expressions, how you convey your ideas, the structure of your ideas, logical arguments, presentation of facts, and effective listening. Listening is also a skill. Most people don't listen. You just talk. No. If you don't learn listening, it's going to be a problem because you're even coming into a different country that speaks differently from you. So if you don't have good listening skills, understanding what the people are saying will become a problem because you don't hear them. Why? Because you don't know how to listen. So listening is also a skill that you must learn and also include in your academic CV to make your sounding. Written communication, you must include in your CV experiences in producing grammatically correct, spelled, logical structure, lively and persuasive, laid out text. You can include in your CV, not just say, I have communication skills, but say, I have communication skills. And you can give examples of where you have applied good communication skills. You can say, maybe my project was written in so and so, and it was outstanding, such that so and so person appreciated. You don't need to write it as a story, but simplify it as a simple sentence, like show what experience that this skill you have demonstrated. You have demonstrated good communication and good listening skill in so and so position, okay? And planning and organization, they are all skills. Work out the task according to plan and meet deadline. It is, you can also give a simple example like, okay, planning and organization, semicolon, I had successfully completed a task based on so and so project that was given to so and so lecturer during my so and so undergraduate. Put it in simple sentences and add to it. Problem solving. You can give examples of where you had solved a problem. Creativity and innovations, these are all things that we want in graduate school. Identifying a need, being resourceful, being able to see different perspectives and devising several methods of analyzing a problem. And then teamwork. It's very important for you to be able to work with others. You cannot be an island. You must be able to work with others. So let's quickly look at examples of what the CV is on academic CV is. Like I said, the CV is the one that actually conveys what information it's supposed to convey, right? So if I see your CV, it should immediately tell me the full story of you without me actually knowing you. In 3 minutes, I should be able to get the key information that I want to get. So here you see personal details, name, contact details, nationality, or work authorization for, in this case, if you are applying for a work. That's all. Education, what are the dates, what are the results, and what are the notable achievements that you had achieved from that particular course, either your bachelor's or your master's. Don't worry about your high school or your primary school. It's not important for graduate admissions mostly. Most people don't normally consider that. So I wouldn't say you should include your primary school. It's not important. Focus on except if you are applying for a bachelor's degree. If you're applying for a bachelor's degree, fine, then you can include your WAEC. Otherwise, WAEC is not important. Your BSc or your master's if you have them. And then in this case, You can put simple tasks like which analysis did you do, your research, written communication, creativity, problem solving. These are all the simple things that you can include under your education that as part of the things that you had include. Your work experience, where have you worked? If you have worked substantially, you can include them and try to separate them. Like I've said, you can have work experience based on research internship, based on research experience, or based on internship experience, or based on laboratory experience, or based on, one or two of the experiences that you have had. Those are all jobs that you have done, and it's good to include them. But then give a brief description of the role. What did you do in that particular job? Specific achievement, what did you achieve in that particular role? And then you can tag simple, uh, awareness, like, okay, commercial awareness, customer service, what, simple things that you did in that job, or what your key responsibilities was, and how you were able to make the company you work for value you even better. Okay, then leadership positions or responsibilities, fine, you can include them, include the organization and the roles. And then the skills, like I said earlier on, you can segment your skills into different skills, IT skills, interpersonal skills, social skills, blah, 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 depending on who you are submitting the CV to. If you're submitting a CV to a graduate school that wants you to see this, because some scholarship, like I said earlier on, scholarship will even award you scholarship based on your extracurricular activities, right? So there are scholarships that need people who have done something in leadership. Include the skills that you gain from your leadership experiences, and it will position you better, okay? And extracurricular activity, again, like here, you can highlight your strengths for the application, even through extracurricular activity. Like, for instance, you play football very well, and you were the one that scored most of the goals that led to your university club or your whatever club won a certain prestigious cup. That is an achievement that you have done. It is okay to include it on your academic CV and make sure you highlight that, okay, this is your contribution to this as an extracurricular activity. There is nothing as hobby. Don't use hobby. Instead of using hobby, use extracurricular activity and not hobby. Hobbies doesn't make any sense. Okay? And then evidences of success. That is what they want to see. So example on the left here, you can see this is someone's CV, just full name and the person's LinkedIn address and the person's email and GitHub. Simple. The mobile contact on the left and the Gmail account on the left. That's it. Education, the listed and then highlighted, say GPAs, everything just highlighted. Simple. This is a bachelor's and a master's degree holder CV. And then the person went straight to summarize the skills. We have language skills, framework skills, tools, platforms, soft skills, right? Under languages, Python, SQL, frameworks, Pandas, NumPy, tools, Power BI, Excel, PowerPoint, and Tableau. Then platforms, PyCharm, Jupyter Notebook, etc. And then soft skill, reporting, strong networking, management. So this is a good CV, right? Then the person moves to work experiences, and you highlight, like I said, where you work, from when to when, and then what were your key responsibilities and key achievements. And you see here, just in a single line, and the person said, I streamline data collection and reporting procedures, reducing processing time by 20%, enhance 20%, thereby enhancing efficiency, right? So you see that in just one line, the person state what they did and then what the achievements was. That is okay. Just a single line is enough for you to state what you have done and what you actually achieve. Then the person moved to projects, right? So the project, the person said, okay, I have achieved 96% accuracy rate in forecasting students. So you see that he is including both achievements and role. What the person did and what the person achieved, it's included in just single lines. So once anyone sees this, the person goes, okay, fine, this is good. So this is really concise and then straightforward. No need for so many writings. And then certifications. You see the different certifications the person has and the dates. So this is a good CV for any start, okay? And then this is also another example here where a student from this school has to put internship experiences. And then you see the person puts the internship where the person did the internship and then what exactly the person learned from the internship. You see, so you see, I cultivated human-induced pluripotent stem cells. In this case, I concluded the mitochondrial oxidation damage in CNS. So you state what exactly you did during your internship. Most people go to do IT, but you don't pay attention to what you actually did there. It's important for you to include what exactly you did during your ITs or during your internships in your CVs, because it's one way of telling them that, okay, you have some sort of experience. And then we move to laboratory or translational, laboratory experiences. The person mentions the lab that the person had done some research on, and then what research that the person did within such lab. And then he moved further here to segment project experience. And then he mentioned which university the person has done a project, and then what exactly they did and what they found. And we come down here, you see education. So your CV could take different format depending on the wealth of your experiences, right? Like I said, some people's CV could be 1 page, some people could be 3 pages. It all depends on how much of experience and how much of information you are able to see. And then the most important thing is, what do you want the graduate school to know about you? Those are the key information you should include on your CV. Anything you don't want them to know, you don't need to include it. But the ones you want them to know, make sure you scream it out and make sure you emphasize it. Okay, so you see the person is bolding the key things that needs to be bolded here. And the same thing on the left side, even leadership experiences. You see that they included these voluntary experiences. So the person has volunteered in some so and so, the person has did so and so and so, you include this, and then conferences attended, publications, so and so. So this is what actually makes a good academic CV. Men looking at this thing in 3 minutes, I can get a lot of information about these applicants. I don't necessarily need to, read everything, but then I can immediately scan through this CV and get as much information as you need. So this is how a good academic CV should be. It should be detailed, but then very concise and very focused, straight to the point of what you did, where you did it, and what you achieved. That will sell you any day, anytime. Okay. So I think with this, you can say, now I included this example because I see that some people want to write a profile. I have reviewed so many CVs for people, and I see they write this thing called profile. And what information that they present on that profile is not really what should be. So that's why I brought these 2 examples. On the left here, you see this person says profile. But in the profile, you see the person says expertise in biochemistry and molecular biology. Over 4 years of experience in RNA, from 30 to 40, 560 nucleotide synthesis, and then strongly experienced in protein. But most of times, what people do is they say profile, and then they're going to start writing one long sentence of, I am so and so and so person, I am motivated to do and so and so, I am this. In an academic CV, that is not. If you are writing a resume, you can do that. But if you are writing an academic CV, if you want to be a profile, this is what it should be. Go straight to tell us what your experience is and probably what you are interested in doing. Okay, very brief. So a short profile should look like this and not necessarily a long sentence, because trust me, nobody is going to read that sentence. But if you structure it into bullet points like this, it's very easy for any recruiter to immediately see what information you want to provide on your profile. Or otherwise, I would say delete it. It's not necessarily important. But if you must include it, make it concise and make it straightforward. And on the right, the same thing, this person profile, 7 years of experience working on interdisciplinary research team and independent projects with expertise in community-based research, PhD in geography with a focus on interdisciplinary, blah, blah, blah. You see, so they just make sure everything is simple so that we don't need to read much. We just need to read 1 or 2 points and then that's it. Because trust me, every year, thousands of applicants submit applications, and there is only limited time for the reviewers to actually review your CV. So they don't want to spend more time on it. So be as concise as possible and then go straight to the point, okay? And some of the information that you cannot necessarily highlight here, take them to your statement of purpose and then emphasize them more on your statements of purpose. So I think with this, we are able to know what exactly a good CV is. And if we see one, we should be able to distinguish which is good and which is not good. So I have just 30 minutes. That's why I'm rushing, because I don't know if I'm going to finish everything or not. So let's move forward to what exactly makes a statement of purpose good. We have finished with what an academic CV should look like and what it should be. And if there are any questions, you can feel free to write them down and send them later on, okay? But let's proceed to what an SOP is. So for the statements of purpose, there are 2 things in graduate school. You always see a statement of purpose or a personal statement. We are going to know the difference between the both of them and which is which. Okay, so first of all, we begin with a statement of papers, or normally called an SOP. It is an important document that you must submit for every graduate application, and it is one of the documents that will decide whether you'll be admitted or not. It is not necessarily your CGPA. So you can have people with 5.0 with a very bad SOP and they are not admitted. And you can have people who have just 2.2 or 2.1, but with excellent SOP and they are admitted, because this is an opportunity for you to talk about yourself. Your inability to talk about yourself will harm you. So we want to know that you are able to think, you are able to use your imagination and tell a good story about yourself. It's not easy, right? That is why it is very important. But then it is easy if you take some key things into consideration. So, first of all, the statement of purpose must be informative. It is an opportunity to speak about you, to speak about your experiences, to speak about your motivation, to speak about why you want to go to graduate school. It must be informative, it must be focused, it must convey your research interests and qualifications. It must describe your response or your reasons and motivations for pursuing any graduate school. You must include that, or the chosen field, and your notable experiences from your past that are aligned or closely aligned to your ambitions or whatever you want to do with your graduate school applications. Okay, it must also indicate briefly your career objective. What exactly do you want to achieve with this, your PhD application or this scholarship application? What do you really want to do? You must know why. Because if you don't know why and you are given admissions, your PhD will suffer, because you might enter a PhD program, and because you don't know why you started a PhD, you now see a different opportunity, or you begin to make money and you forget that you were here for a PhD, and you now focus on making money instead of focusing on your PhD, right? So your why is very important. And then it must also indicate your career objectives. I've said that. It must also have specific requirements. That is, every SOP and every university you will ever apply to, they have a requirement for a statement of purpose. So it is very, very foolish for anyone to write just one SOP and then you use that same one SOP. You are applying to University of Michigan with the same SOP. You are applying to Cornell University with the same SOP. You are applying to Harvard with the same SOP. You are applying to MIT with the same SOP. It doesn't work. Every school has what they're looking for, and you must tailor your SOP to a particular school, to a particular program, to a particular department, and then include specific requirements from each of those program or schools for you to actually win an SOP, right? So there is no generic SOP. So let's proceed. These are the key things that you must be in your SOP. This describes your experiences that led you to pursue a graduate education. What experience? Like, for instance, I can say, okay, because I was working in computational something, so, or because, just frame a story about something. I'm going to give example as we proceed that actually motivated you to wanting to. Maybe you love chemistry so much, or you love biology so much when you were in high school. And then this is something that actually made you even want to study biology even further, up to the extent of going to have a PhD in biology. It's because of a particular interest. And SOP is an opportunity for you to express what that interest is. What is prompting you to want to study chemistry in PhD level, or biology at PhD level, or even a master's level? What exactly is the reason why you want to? That must be clear, as concise as possible. Okay, so this will enable graduate committees to know whether you're going to be successful or not. That's why it's important. Once they read your SOP, they can tell who is ready for graduate school and who is not ready for graduate school. Yep. So it should include sections such as social, cultural, or experiences, leadership positions, or community engagement, or equity and inclusion effort, or sustainable development initiative. What have you done in the past? This is an opportunity for you to discuss what you have done in the past. For instance, I was a student union government, and during my student union government, I led the university to do so and so and so things. I was able to do so and so projects. I was able to do this. This is an opportunity for you to talk and discuss all of the things that you have done previously that are helpful for you, or that actually shape your life, and even want you to become a leader, or want you to be to become something in this particular discipline. For instance, you have tried to solve an environmental problem, and because you had attempted to solve an environmental problem in the past, that has ignited a passion within you, and you want to use that same passion to study how to solve more environmental problems in the future through a graduate school. This is an opportunity for you to emphasize that. Okay, so now this is like a SOP versus personal statement, and like we just kind of say here. Okay, so you must describe your reasons and motivations for pursuing graduate school degree in a chosen field, noting experiences that have shaped your ambitions, right? Then a personal statement is complementary. For this case, a personal statement, not an SOP. A statement of purpose, I'm going to give more differences in subsequent slide. But then the difference between the SOP and a statement is that a SOP is more like a scholarly writing. It does not necessarily have to be focused on personal. It doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to include a story so much about your life and so much about anything. It has to be straightforward about what you want to study, why you want to study it, what you have done in the past, and why you want to go to a particular graduate school. It has to be clear and focused. But then a personal statement, you can include personal stories, personal influences, and personal things that have actually made you make a personal decision to want to do a particular thing. So personal statements is complementary, and then it should not duplicate information from an SOP. So if a university is asking you for both a personal statement and an SOP, they are expecting two different documents from you. One document which is focused on you and your story and why you want to go to graduate school. And then one document that is focused on what do I want to do in graduate school? What problem do I want to solve in graduate school? How am I prepared to solve this problem? Or which strategies have I done in the past that I think that I might apply such strategies in current or in future that can actually help to the successful actualization of this particular goal. That is an SOP. While a personal statement will be like, okay, which story or what has happened to me? Was I sick? Was it financial hardship? Or was it because I came from a poor background that actually did well? What actually motivated me? Why did I even graduate with first class? What actually made me graduate with a first class? What are the personal reasons that actually influence your life and make you become successful? This is a personal statement is an opportunity for you to emphasize more on those personality traits. It could be social, it could be cultural, it could be, anything, but it has to do with your personal information that actually help you, right? While a statement of purpose will just focus straight on the academic part, what you want to do and how you want to do it, right? So now you must also check with your graduate programs whether an SOP whether a personal statement is required or not. If a personal statement is required, you must write it in such a way that it is personal. If an SOP is required, you must write an SOP. Don't mix the two. Not this department is asking you for SOP and they did not ask for personal statement and then you submit a personal statement. It's not going to make sense. If they're asking for SOP, give SOP. If they're asking for personal statement, give personal statement. If they're asking for the both, give the both and make sure they are different. Okay. Now, this is not a document to share sensitive information. Yes, you don't need to share everything about your personal life. You don't need to go and start mentioning your parents' name, your relative, or whatever has happened to you. It's not an opportunity for you to tell an empathetic story for people to sympathize with you. No, graduate school will not sympathize with you. Recruiters will not sympathize with you. We want to see that even though you have passed through suffering, but then you are able to accomplish something substantial from your hardship, and not necessarily telling me that because you are from a poor background, that's why you're applying for a scholarship. No, we're not. It's not. Scholarship is not for poor. It's not for poor people, right? It's not based on poverty. So even though you are poor, but then you are able to do something substantial, something outstanding, that's what we want to see. What did you really do with your poverty? That is an opportunity to express it and not necessarily to try to show for people to sympathize with you, right? Yeah. So in a more specific way, I would say that a statement of purpose is more formal, and then it highlights your specific interests, your qualifications, who in this department or program or advisor you are expected to work with. For instance, you're applying to University of Sydney. Which department are you applying for? Why are you applying to that particular program? Which person in the departments you are interested in working with? This is also the same thing with schools in the US. And then, why are you a good fit with that program? You must demonstrate why you think that you are the best candidates that fits that particular program in your SOP. Very concise. An SOP should not be more than 2 pages. 1.5 pages, okay. 1 page is okay. Very focused and straight to the point. No side stories and everything, right? And then it must answer the question, what do you intend to do with this degree? You must know why you want, you must know what you want to do with your PhD. What do you want to become after you graduate from your PhD? An SOP should answer that question. So at the end of the day, if someone reads an SOP, the person should be able to see, okay, this is the problem you want to solve in graduate school. This is the advisor you want to work with. This is the department you want to go to, or this is the program you're applying for. And then this is what you want to do with this PhD at the end. It must be clear. And then a personal statement, on the other hand, is less formal, which means even the English here should be less formal. The English in the statement of purpose should be more formal and more academic and more research intense, right? While here, it can be more personal, it can be less, it's less formal, right? So you see your experiences, your motivations, what has shaped you, who you are, why you are a good fit. And then importantly, it must answer the question, what do I want to do? What do I want people to know? What do I want the graduate school to know about me? You must focus on that, okay? So continuation, very different from application essay. It is less personal. That's a personal statement in this case. Now, it is less personal. It is more focused, more this. So think of your statement as an argument or a proposal. Is it a master's or a PhD that you're applying for? Okay, my time is already up. So let me just summarize, okay? So you see, what so I want to study and why? Why should we be interested in you? Why are you interested in graduate school? Why are you interested in the program? And why should it be you? So these are the questions you must answer. So the advice I would give for a good SOP is start early. Late things will never go well. Give a draft to people to review, and then personalize each statement of purpose with each program and each school. Every school, every program, every department you're going to apply for must have a personalized statement of purpose. Don't write one SOP and submit it to 10 different schools. So an SOP outline should basically be importance, motivation, your qualifications, necessity, and relevance of the program, right? I wanted to read this, but I don't know if I'm going to read this. So this is an example of a good one that I think is good. You see someone started here, you must be creative with how you structure your introduction or your SOP, right? So you see in this first one here, as I walk through the bustling automobile, blah, 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 you see that this person automatically is able to state where the person comes from. Like there's a connection between what problem is in the society and what he wants to study and why the person is applying to this. In very short few lines, the person is able to stay here. While this one here on the left here, while the last one here, you can see that this is like most of what most people will do. They just write a general story without necessarily any focus. Well, I'm going to share this slide, so probably you can read it and get the difference of what I wanted to talk about. But then if you're writing an introduction, you must try to make sure that the introductory part of your SOP is as captivating as important, because if I don't read the first line of your SOP and I don't find it interesting, I will not even be interested to read the entire story. So you must make sure that your introductory part of your SOP is as captivating as possible so that someone will be able to read the entire story that follows it below. And also, this is a good example that I wanted to share, but I could probably share it with you guys. So my time is already up. And if you have any questions, you can send in the chat or speak with the coordinator and I'll answer them later on. So thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tom Smith, for that very clear description of what a CV and what a statement of purpose and personal, what an SOP and personal statement should look like. So from everything, we see that clearly you do not just have to put yourself the static part of yourself on your CV, just a recap. You don't have to just put what you have done, but also your skills, not just the skills you learned, but the skills you have acquired through life. Because these people are looking for individuals that they believe will be leaders or they will easily work with, or people they will have no problem working with to achieve a common goal. Then also we have seen how statement of purpose should look like. And yes, I think for those of us that have written this before, we have seen the mistakes that we do make, and I believe that this that we have heard today, we will do better, and the chances of us moving quick are absolutely now much higher. Okay, so we're going to go down to the second part of today's webinar. Before I continue, I would love to remind us again, please, if you have questions, do write them down before you forget, write them down. And during the question and answer section, we will answer your questions and provide more clarity. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Okay, so now
sorry, Dollars. Please, we just take few questions for this presentation before we move to the second one.
Okay.
So please, if you have any question with respect to the lecture that has just been delivered, you could just indicate by raise of hand, or quickly you type it down and then on the chat box. If you indicate, I will see you and then call you. If you type it, I can read it out. So either ways, you can quickly do that. We don't have much time to spend, please.
Type this thing, let me read it. How will you know the SOP of an institution? How will you know the SOP of an institution?
Okay, we have taken your question. How will you know the SOP of an institution? Please, the speaker, take note. We will have like 3 to 5 questions for the first set, and then the speaker will address them before we come back if there are still more. So how will you know? This is from Priscilla Mbang, correct? How will you know the SOP of an institution? Any further questions?
Yes, I have a question, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is, while he's speaking, he talked about knowing who you are going to work with in the department. This is a place you are not going to. How do you know who and who? You may have your research interest, but how do you know who you are going to work with in the department when you have not been there? That is where I have.
Okay, thank you. That is from Mr. Demodotu. How will you know the person you have to work with in an institution you have no idea of the personalities there? So please, the speaker, we have 2 questions for you now. Any other question before he addresses them? Is this a question from Etchen? Regarding having different SOP, I am writing different ideas or just tailor a paragraph to the faculty member of each school. So it's asking if he's to write different ideas or tailor the paragraph to a particular faculty member in a certain university. I hope that question is clear, Tom Smith.
Yeah, it is. Can I go ahead?
Okay, please go ahead and take these 3 questions before we come back.
Okay, so the answer to the first person, how will I know the SOP for the school? Now, every university would advertise for admissions, right? When admission starts, they put admissions requirements. You must go to the website and read the requirements, and the requirements for the SOPs are always included for each department and each school. So you must check with the departmental requirements and graduate school requirements. In fact, at times it's 2. You need to go to the graduate school and see the requirements for the graduate school application that you are applying in the departmental graduate requirements. Some departments might have additional requirements in addition to the general requirement from graduate school. So you must check that. That information can be found on each of the university school websites. If you go to a university school, let's say for instance, if you go to the University of Michigan, you go to departments of engineering or faculty of engineering graduate school, you're going to see the graduate school requirements for all engineerings. And then if you go to chemical engineering, you're going to see the requirements for PhD applications to chemical engineering. And each of them, you're going to see an SOP as well as statement of purpose requirements. So if an SOP is needed, it will be stated there, submit an SOP. If it is a personal statement, it will be stated there, submit a personal statement. And it will also be stated there how you are to write your statement of purpose or your SOP. Like for instance, some schools will tell you in your SOP, explain this, explain that, explain that, explain that. That information is always provided for you. So you have to go to each school and check it. That also brings me to the second question. How will I know who I am to work with? You are expected to include 3 people that you want to work with. in your statement of purpose or personal statement, depending on which one is asked. So you have to do a little bit of research. Go to the school. For instance, I'm interested in applying to University of Georgia. I have to go to University of Georgia, Department of Chemistry or Department of Chemical Engineering, and I have to look for professors or doctors in that university and see what area of research they are doing. A PhD is more like a specialization, right? So you are either specializing in one area of chemistry or one area of engineering or one area of biology or one area of education, right? Even people in education, you are either interested in special education or behavioral study or psychology or there must be something that you are interested in, and then there is somebody who is working in that thing. You need to know that person's name. You need to know what the research the person is doing. And if possible, you can also write email to the person. I think maybe we are going to do a different webinar where we talk about how to write emails to these people, right? So maybe that can come in later and we talk about that. But you need to know at least 3 people in every department that you're applying to. You need to know what they are working on, and you need to include in your statements of purpose or your SOP that I am interested in working with so and so person because the person's research is what I love to do, or the person's experience or the person's research is directly or indirectly related to my past experience, and therefore I would prefer to work with this person. That is a requirement that must be on your SOP. So you need to do that research by yourself, okay? And then that same person, this question here, the third one says, having different SOPs and writing different ideas or just tailor a paragraph. It's not enough for you to tailor a paragraph. Like for instance, if you write a general SOP and you are interested in let's say, data analytics for biomedical imaging, you just want to do maybe data and AI analysis for biomedical imaging. That's topic you have written on would be very good for University of Georgia, but it will not be very good for University of Michigan. It will not be good for MIT. It will not be good for Harvard. So if you intend to apply to different schools, you must make sure you tailor your idea towards a particular school because not everything is studied the same. Chemistry is not chemistry everywhere. So you cannot just say, I want to study a PhD in chemistry and you just general. No, there is inorganic chemistry, there is catalysis in chemistry, there is synthesis in chemistry, there is this, even if it's education, there is psychology, there is behavior analysis, there is, a social education, there is education of children, there is education for disability. Inside disability, you have visual impairment, you have hearing impairment, you have reading disability, you have so many fields, right? So you must tailor each idea on an SOP with the school and the department because maybe University A can be studying this thing. That does not mean University B is also going to study that same thing. So if you write one idea and just change the names of faculty, it might not suit because what is in this department might not be exactly what is in the other department. So you need to change both the idea and also the person you are interested in working with, except you are really sure that the 2 schools are doing the same thing. If you are very sure that the 2 schools are doing the same thing, fine. You can, in that case, you can change only the faculty, the paragraph. But if you are not sure whether the 2 schools are studying the same thing, I would say change both the idea and the person you're interested in working with, okay? So this other question says, regarding question 2, is it applicable with masters? For masters application, no. Most of the time, masters are not required to state who they want to work with because masters is by coursework. You don't need to do much of research in your masters. But if the school requires you to write that, it's going to be on your requirement. So if your master's requirements say include a faculty that you are going to work with, that means there's going to be some part of research in your master's. Then you have to do it as well. You have to include people that you want to work with. Okay, but if it is not stated and it's just masters by coursework, that means you're not going to do any research. In that case, you don't need to include the people you're going to work with. Okay, so I hope this clarifies anything. Any other question, probably we address them later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Please, before we end this session, we would like to invite Professor Wilfred Murray. He's a full professor in China, so he has admitted or taken 1 or 2 persons in this kind of situation. So he can also contribute to this detailed lecture given by Tom Smith from his own experience, how he has handled many applications from students. So Professor Murray, after this, we can move to the next talk. Thank you.
All right, and thank you very much, Emmanuel Bison, for giving me the chance to speak. Mine is not a contribution, so to say, it's an appreciation to the speaker for doing such an elaborate work in this presentation. We'll all agree that it's an almost perfect presentation, having all the necessary content that one would have expected. I think the only thing missing from this presentation is the fact that the speaker did not bless us with his face throughout the presentation and during the question and answer section. Many of us would have loved to see who this wonderful cross-riverian is, who's doing wonderful things in Australia. And you know, because of future purposes, it's important for us to get to know you. Just to re-emphasize on what Mr. Tom Smith talked about is the expungement. This is one very big mistake that many people make in their CVs, even as at 2025. You need to expunge any point of bias from your CV. So things like nationality should not find its way into your CV. You know, anything that would make someone prejudge you before knowing you, judge your abilities, your personality, whatsoever, you need to take them out of your CV. So your nationality shouldn't find its way into your CV. Your sex should not be in your CV, that's your gender. Your marital status should not be in your CV. But one point that he mentioned about CGPA, you know, CGPA can be used to one's advantage, right? For example, I usually advise people, if you have a very strong CGPA, for example, you were aiming for a 2-1, no, a first class, but you narrowly missed the first class. So it means your CGPA is above 4.0. I would encourage you to include your CGPA in your CV because it shows the recruiter or whoever is assessing your CV that although you have a 2-1, it's a very strong 2-1. Then if I have a CGPA of 3.56, I know I narrowly missed a 2, I narrowly got into a 2-1 class. I'll just state my graduating grade as second class upper division, right? I would not necessarily put my CGPA there so that the person may not prejudge my ability for not being as good as what he expects me to be. So these are just a little point we need to, you know, inculcate. So on that note, I want to sincerely thank Tom Smith, and I know that more questions will come to you either through our WhatsApp platform. So if you're not part of the WhatsApp community yet, you can indicate interest and we'll provide a link in the course of the meeting on how you can join us. While we wait for the next presentation, which promises to be an equally powerful one. So thank you very much to the moderators. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Wilfred. And thank you very much, Mr. Tom Smith. And thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Bison, for that wonderful Q&A where some extra clarity has been gotten. At this point, someone has asked a question, but I want to assure this person that we just need to wait and during the session, your question will be answered. We are going to dive straight to the next part of this webinar, which is going to be a talk about crafting a standout proposal by Dr. Aka Augustine. Dr. Aka Augustine, please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will just try to share my slide. So I guess I'll also can you all see my slide? Is it visible?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes. The slide is visible. It is.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll just put it in a presentation mode or in a slideshow. Is it better now?
Yes, it's okay. But we can zoom if we want to make it clearer by ourselves.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for that warm introduction, and thank you all for making our time to be part of this webinar. My name is Dr. Augustine Uga Aka, and I'm joining this call at the moment from Germany. Well, I am a man of many feathers and many caps. So, but for the purpose of tonight's webinar, I'll just keep it simple. I'm a lecturer, of course, in the University of Calabar, where I believe most of you are either alumni or are currently studying. I'm also a researcher and a scholar with multiples award and scholarship. I'm a leader, a mentor, because I have a lot of mentees, and academic protege. I'm also a realtor, a real estate agent, and recently I got, of course, this title as a peace ambassador, which was awarded to me by the International Center for Ethno-Religious Conflict Mediation in New York. And I think this is the new feathers to my cap. And my research interest essentially focuses on peace and conflict study, global multilateralism, diplomacy, and transatlantic relationship. And for today, I'll be focusing on crafting a standout proposal, which is, of course, the same requirement or an additional requirement, if not the most essential, in addition with SOP and resume or CV, which of course Tom Smith, have taken us through. What we need to understand is that writing a research proposal is always a source of anxiety, especially for fresh graduates who are seeking admission into master's degree programs, or even graduates of master's degree who are seeking admission into a PhD degree program, especially those who feel lost, in the face of novelty and in the face of innovation or innovativeness, pressured by time and restrictions and all the requirements that they have to go through. So what this webinar promises to do is, of course, to achieve three things, which are the fundamental goals and objectives of my presentation today. The first is we'll try to understand the key components of a standout proposal. What does it entail? What are the essential elements that we can, of course, look at to grade a proposal as one that is standout? The second goal or objective that tonight's presentation will achieve is we will learn the techniques for crafting a standout proposal. There are different techniques, and even if what my presentation will propose is not basically traditional, but we will definitely see that either all or a combination of some of the techniques I'll be introducing to you are essential in crafting a good or an excellent or a standout proposal. And the third thing that we'll try to achieve today is how we can avoid some common pitfalls or some common errors or mistakes in proposal writing. And I believe that if we achieve these three objective or aims, then we have had a great meeting. I also want to assume that my audience today is characteristically mixed. We have experts here in proposal writing. We also have novels. We also have people who I classify as being at the middle quadrant, who are not so excellent yet, and who are, of course, still learning the process of crafting a good proposal. Regardless of the quadrant that you fall into, this presentation is important to you, because if you are the expert, you will also be reminded of probably what you've done in the past, and it will freshen your understanding and broaden your horizon. If you are in the middle quadrant, this presentation will also help you, to achieve excellent proposal, as the case may be. And if you are a novel, this is basically for you. And I do hope that at the end of the presentation, you will learn a lot regarding proposal crafting and how you can, of course, achieve a standard proposal in your search for PhD, master's, postdoctoral, scholarship opportunity, as the case may be, or admission into, graduate school. So let's begin with asking this question. What is a research proposal, and why is it necessary in the first place? Do not, demean the question of what is a research proposal. The presentation is not essentially focusing on taking us through the rigor of defining what a proposal is. Of course, from various schools of thought, people have, defined research proposal in a way that suits their interests and in a way that suits their focus and their expectation. But one very promising, definition to the concept of research proposal is one that was given by Onwegweze in 1997. And he says that a research proposal is a formal written plan which communicates ideas about a proposed study in order to obtain approval to conduct the study or to seek funding. That means a research proposal is not a research that has been completed. It is a proposition that you're making either to a potential funding organization or institution, and you're seeking to outline what gives you competitive advantage if you're applying to that institution, as the case may be. So you will be right if you refer to a research proposal as an application. And I think that in one way or the other, we have written or we have made proposals. If you're married, you probably propose to your wife. If you are a student, you probably have written an application before. If you are an employee or an employer of labor, you probably have asked people to submit proposal to you, or you probably have written, a proposal yourself. And so if we understand that a research proposal is a formal writing, keep that in mind, because it will resonate as we make progress in the presentation. The next thing that we'll try to examine is, why is it necessary? And I have, of course, provided 4 importance which speak to the necessity of a research proposal. There are many more. The first is, a proposal helps you to secure funding or approval. Approval in terms of getting the express permission to carry out the research. And many funding institutions, whether it is at faculty level, at institutional level, at state level, the first thing they require from the applicant is a proposal, because that is what defines what, of course, the candidate or the applicant intend to do, because it is in the proposal that those who are calling for the application will know exactly, what the applicant or the candidate, seek to achieve. So through this plan, which is, of course, a proposal, the researcher aims to learn something or, to contribute potentially to any significant, area or aspect in his field of endeavor. And this is very important. and it helps you to seek funding. The second thing is it establishes credibility. So it demonstrates your professionalism and preparedness. It is through proposal that, whoever want to give you an opportunity to study within or to work within will determine how prepared you are for what you're proposing. And the third necessity of a proposal is it demonstrates visibility. Of course, like Locke et al. Have already argued that the proposer evaluates whether the research can be realistically conducted within the constraint of time, resources, and expertise. And when we, of course, get to when I will be talking about the common pitfalls in crafting a research proposal, you will see why the constraint of time, resources, and even expertise is important. And finally, a research proposal builds relationship. And this is one area that a lot of people do not, give attention to, because a proposal opens an avenues for you to collaborate with your peers, your contemporaries, maybe within your institution or, elsewhere. So the first point that established that relationship is through a proposal. I have met a lot of academic friends across the world who we never knew each other from anywhere, from our roots. We never attended, the same schools, but now we are best of collaborators because I was able to send my proposal to them, haven't searched for, what they do and understand that they are working in areas that are very similar with what I'm working on. And that enabled me to establish relationship with them. In 2023, I think, or 2 years ago, I spent about 6 months at Oxford University. That opportunity was created because of relationship and because the person who gave me that window of opportunity, had the privilege to read my proposal, which I sent to him to evaluate. And then I was submitting that proposal for a funding here in Europe. So it's important we know that proposal, is very essential, is very important. So if we know that proposal is important and it helps us to secure funding, it helps us, of course, to establish credibility, to demonstrate visibility, and to build, relationship. Then we need to ask ourselves, what are the preliminary steps, in crafting a good or a standout proposal? And so if you look at the next slide, it focuses on the preliminary steps. The first is motivation and passion. And I decided to arrange these preliminary steps in a sequential order. And I'm going to explain to you why. You must have a motivation and a passion about a particular field of interest or about a particular subject or topic that you want to research on, because a proposal is the skeleton of your research work. Even if I do concede that in the later, part of the research itself, usually there are incidences where you have to make adjustment, maybe methodological adjustment as the case may be, but the blueprint of what you've submitted is still what will guide your research. So you have to be motivated. You wouldn't want to, get into a research field or a research area that you do not have motivation on, you do not have passion for. Let me give you an example. I started my academic sojourn as a science student, or from the background of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, etc. So I had my first degree in the Faculty of Science, now Faculty of Biological Sciences. But I do not have any passion for
Excuse me,
biology.
Dr. Waka.
Yes.
Your PPT is still on the very first slide.
On the first slide?
Yes, so the viewers are not seeing what exactly you're talking about.
What slides are you seeing now?
Slide number 1, the one that has your introduction with your photo.
That's serious. And for me, it's on the slide I'm talking about. So this is slide number 1, right?
Yes.
Did it move?
No, it didn't.
Oh, something must be wrong somewhere.
It's still on slide number 1.
Hello, sir. So I
Yeah,
think maybe if you put the presentation to full screen, it just might move. Proceed.
maybe I'll stop sharing, then start all over again. Can you see the second slide now?
No. Okay. Yes, we are seeing the second slide.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. We're seeing it.
Yeah, sorry for, that mixed up because I put it on presentation mode. So I think I have already dealt with these goals and objectives, and I have dealt with this, what is a research proposal and the importance. So can you see the slide preliminary steps?
Yes,
sir.
we
I can
can.
see it.
Okay, so this is where we are. Sorry for that mixed up. So let's run as quickly as possible. So I was saying that you need to be motivated. You also need to be passionate about, what you want to research or the research area that you're interested in. And just to also pick up from where I stopped, I was making an emphasis or giving an example about my academic, of course, sojourn. And I did say that I started from biological sciences, but I realized that I do not have any passion, with dealing with organisms and going to the lab and, taking care of animals and all of those things. So I had to cross carpet and switch into, of course, non-STEM field, which has guided my research and, of course, my career progress up until now. And I realized that when I switched, my passion became 100% because what I could do effortlessly in my new field of endeavor, I couldn't do it, flexibly enough, in biological sciences. For instance, I do not like working with anything that has to do with blood and organisms and stuff like that. So it was difficult for me to cope. And that's why I think that passion and motivation is important. The next thing in the preliminary steps is for you to decide the specific subject and the area of focus that you want to research on. And many people have argued that this is always very difficult, and I agree, because choosing a topic requires you to do a lot of research, because you have to choose a topic that is contemporary. You also have to choose a topic that is researchable. You have to choose a topic that meet the requirement of the institution that you are applying to. So this is very important. So several issues must be addressed before, starting, the process of writing. And one of those issues is to choose a topic. So you must try to read extensively. And that leads me to the third point. You have to read extensively to understand what previous scholars in that particular field, have done, and what are the gaps, or what are, the research problems that haven't yet been, preferred solutions to. And if you do not read extensively, it will be difficult for you to understand that this is where that research field has gotten to. And this is where, you need to have your point of departure, or this is where you need to take off from. So I recommend that you read extensively. These are all the preliminary steps that you have to follow before, starting, your research proposal. And the next thing is you try to identify the existing gaps or the problem. Haven't read the related literature and review them. You identify, the existing gaps or the problem, because there is no research without an identified problem. Every research, whether it is in STEM or non-STEM field, exists to solve a problem. So the questions of your research, what we usually or commonly call research questions, are drawn from the problems, of the status quo. And the problems of the status quo are inextricably tied to the existing gaps that you have, of course, discover. And you can only make that discovery if you read extensively into, the related literature. Then the next thing you do is you try to think solution. And at this stage, you're only proposing. The solution might be broader, it might be limited. The one you think about ab initio might be discarded. You might also get to the proper writing stage after you have been admitted, or after you've been accepted into the program, or after you've been awarded, and you realize that the solution you thought about, someone has already offered it, and extant literatures have covered that solution. So you have to be flexible enough to either think outside the box. That's why I caption this preliminary step, think solution. And thinking is a continuous process. As long as, we are alive, we keep thinking. So if someone has offered that solution or has, published, his findings with that solution, you have to think of something else. If you are publishing the same thing, it has to be a little bit contributive. And you have to take it beyond what the person, has already published. Then you understand your guidelines. This is very important. I have been privileged to review a lot of proposals for applicants, and I have been I've also been privileged to sit in the board of a scholarship, awarding board committee that review proposals. And I realized that a lot of people take guidelines for granted. If the institution you're applying to or the scholarship body you're applying to says that your proposal shouldn't be more than 6 pages, or it shouldn't be more than 5 pages, including bibliography, don't submit a 10-page, proposal. Because first and foremost, they start the screening from the guideline that they have set. If they said your proposal shouldn't have literature review, no matter how it's important to you, you don't have to include it. So respecting guideline is important. And I think Tom Smith mentioned this when he was presenting about respecting institutional guidelines and requirements. Every institution, and that is the truth, has its own requirement and guideline. I'm almost concluding my second PhD in Europe. What I'm doing in terms of research, even if I'm working on a monograph, 2 days ago, I did receive an acceptance for my second PhD to be published as a book, and in an international series in the United States. But I realized that the steps to, of course, writing and finishing or completing a PhD, the step I followed when I was doing my PhD in Unica is essentially or completely different from the steps that my institution here recommended for me. So I won't be so rigid to not consider the guidelines of my institution here, because I think that I have known some of the steps, that are widely recommended as far as doing PhD in non-STEM field in Unica or most of the, institutions in Africa is concerned. No, you have to work with the guidelines of the institution. And this is very important. And I think that as potential scholarship applicants, you have to keep this in mind. So let's move to looking at the content or components of a research proposal. This is not universally normative. What I mean is, this is not absolute. So there are people who will say, well, for instance, even if the title page is important, a research proposal shouldn't begin with an outline. So if you look at what I've prepared here, I try to bring in everything from different, walks of life. And this also might not be the way, proposer in STEM's field, are expected to be written. But an ideal proposer should at least have this component and the content that you see on the slide. The first is the title, which I've already talked about briefly. Then you also have to, try to write out your thematic outline of what you want to do and how you want to do it, especially if the requirement didn't specifically say you should, write the proposal in 5 or in 6 or in 10 pages. If they leave it open, then you have the opportunity to show your expertise, and including an outline in that situation is also important. There are other application or institutional requirement that specifically says we have to see an outline of your research proposal. I think the funding that I got, to do my second PhD needed that, because when I was preparing for this presentation, I had to go back to many proposals that I've written, in the past and even in the present. And I've written well more than 400 to 600 proposals. Some I just wrote them when I had the passion, especially when, the problems of the status quo as at then, surfaced. The next thing you have to consider is the introduction. Some call this background to the study, and this background to the study is common for most of you who, are studying in Nigeria or in Unica or graduated from Unica. Others refer to it as executive summary. Either way, it is still the same thing, and it seeks to achieve the same thing. But very importantly, I need you to understand that for the introduction, a good and sharp introduction set the reader's, mood and arouses his or her interest in the project. So you have to try as much as possible to make your first few sentences under your introductory, section to be very compelling. Very compelling. So you have to avoid, the temptation of adding too much information, especially at the introductory section. So maintain focus and relevance and, clarity. Very important. Then if you have your introduction, then you can, of course, preempt your research problems or your research questions. What are the questions that, your research, seeks to answer? And why are those questions, important in the first place? So you can preempt that, and you also include that in your research proposal. Let's say you're doing a research on, let's say, counter-insurgency and maybe terrorism in Africa. You have to propose the questions that make sense, that are very related to the grand scheme of things as far as that subject matter is concerned, because it is from your question that you can draw your, of course, relevant research objectives or aims or goals. And you must do the best you can to make sure that your objective or your aims are measurable, that they are measurable and they are realistic and achievable within, of course, the frame of time or, the timeline that you have, proposed for your research. Then you also do preliminary literature review. At this stage, since it's a proposal, you're not doing like complete or an exhaustive literature review. No, you can do a thematic preliminary literature review. You show your audience, this is what this person has done, this is the findings, this is the conclusion, and this is where you think that your research is important. Because without a preliminary literature review, it will be difficult for your audience. By audience, I mean whoever, will be reading your proposal, to situate your research proposal. You have to show that X, Y, and Z scholar, have worked on this field. This is the finding reported, and this is the conclusion made. But this is where you're coming in. So there have to be that relationship sequentially and also a point of departure as far as, literature review is concerned. Then the next steps is, of course, your methodology. This is one of the most crucial component or content of a research proposal, because it is in methodology that you show how your response to the question, how you want to do the research, how you want to carry out the research is very important. There are many instances where reviewers or evaluators or those in the committee for award do not care to look at, other, component that I've mentioned. They just look at the title because they have thousands of proposals to look at. Professor Emori is here. I think haven't reached that status or that height in academics. He will agree with me that if you are in any committee to evaluate, applicants for probably scholarship or maybe postgraduate admission, you receive a lot of applications. Sometimes because the professors themselves are very busy or the evaluators are very busy, they just move after reading the title. Maybe they can just look at the objective. They move to the methodology, straight away to the methodology. When I got my PhD supervisor, my second PhD supervisor, and when I moved to the institute, when I arrived, the first meeting we had, I asked him one question, and I think I would like to share his response with us here today. I asked him, why did you opted to accept me as your PhD student? And he told me, because of your methodology. And do you know why? I went back and read that research proposal. I realized that the methodology I use align exactly and completely with what the institution does. Every institution, every department has the way they do their own research. And I had to read a lot of their publication to be able to sit my methodology in a way that, will arouse his interest. And the next thing is you also have to preempt your expectations and your outcome. These are not concrete, but having a preemptive, idea of how, the outcome of the research will be, and you make your audience to know that you understand that this might be the possible outcome is also important. This does not mean that you're writing or explaining your result. No, especially if you're in the STEM field, you know that your research cannot be said to be absolute or completed at the stage where you're writing proposal. Because for instance, if you need to do laboratory work, you have to finish the laboratory work. If you need to do the field work, you have to finish the field work before you can have some result that you can lay your hands on and probably build on. But somehow, in my experience, most evaluators usually want to see how the applicant think through. What is the expectation of what are the expectations of what they are trying to solve, and how can the outcome be potentially briefly and precisely talked about in their proposal. It's very important. Then don't forget your timeline. Many times people write proposal and do not include timeline. Even if it is in a conventional setting, let's say you just finished your master's or you just finished your bachelor's and you want to apply for master's degree in the University of Calabar, and they ask you to write proposal, what they commonly call concept notes. You have to include timeline, even if you know that master's degree, the minimum duration is 2 years in University of Calabar. You still have to include timeline. At what stage will you, of course, finish the introduction? At what stage will you advance to literature review? And how are you going to do your literature review? Is it going to be done thematically, or will you use a software to be able to arrange the literature review? Where exactly will you get your materials from? Because the world is divided into two broad schools of thought. We have Western scholars of course, who are in the North Pole. Then we also have Southern scholars who are in the South. And so you have to understand all of these. And you have to show the timeline that, okay, after 2 months, 3 months, I'll be moving to the field. If your research will require you to go to the field, either to collect data through surveys or through, focus group study or through questionnaire or through interview, or perhaps you are in biology, biological sciences, in chemistry or in physics, etc. And you know that your research work will require you to be in the lab, do some experiment, do some exercises. You have to show the timeline. If you leave it very vague and very open, sometimes the evaluators will assume that you really do not know what you want to do. And it is also advisable that you also include your targeted or estimated budget. How much do you think you will take to run the research? If you're going to the field, how much will that cost you? If you need to get specimen, like of course those who are in STEM field, there are times that you have to import even the specimen that you have to work on. You have to import maybe the chemicals, or you have to import the reagents. You have to know what you're proposing in terms of the budget, to import all of that. If your institute or your lab doesn't have, one or two, maybe reagent or chemical, and you will need to import it, you have to probably capture that under the budget. It is still not fixed, but at least having a flexible overview of what the budget is like is very important. And finally, don't forget your bibliography. That's your references. And for every work, that you cited in the body of the proposal, you must, acknowledge the author or the authors in your final bibliography. Very important. Then what are the techniques for creating a standout proposal? I have listed a number of techniques here that will guide you to create a standout proposal. The first thing is, and I can't overemphasize on this, know your audience. And like I said, ab initio, audience in this context is, of course, those who will be reading your proposal, those you're submitting the proposal to. You have to know your audience, understand what their priorities are, what their challenges are, and also what their expectations are. If you're applying to Harvard University, for instance, I think Tom Smith mentioned it, you have to first do a ground research about the specific faculty or the specific department or institution that you intend to apply to. You have to know what their research priorities are. The fact that you see that it is the university doesn't mean that everyone in the university, and I need to say this especially for our younger ones who probably just finished their bachelor's degree, doesn't mean that everybody in the university is doing the same thing. No, you have to know the priorities of the institute, the department, and sometimes I will say this, even down to the specific professor or supervisor that you intend to work with. And this is what I did. And I'm not saying, what hasn't worked for me. Everything I'm saying here is what I've experienced. This is what I did when I was applying, for especially my recent, award by ACUNS, which allowed me to do research in the United Nations University in Tokyo. It's not long I came back from there. That was before Christmas. I had to study first and foremost the entire faculty. What have they been publishing? What have been their focus? What have been their priorities? Then I reduced it to a number of persons that their work, align with what I'm doing or what I'm interested in doing. And I was now able to square it to just one person who also have worked, extensively, on peace and conflict, and of course, global multilateralism. And I followed his publication. I read over 20 to 25 of his articles, although he has more. And let me say this is also a tip that worked for me. And I think This will be the best time to say it. In my proposal to you, to the United Nations University in Tokyo, I quoted about 5 times that same professor that I was intending to work with. I quoted him in my proposal. And so he couldn't have probably argued that this person doesn't know my work. And I'm selling this as an advice to you. If you know the specific person that you intend to work with, it's always important to reference them in your proposal. It gives them some sense of, joy, I would say. Professor Imori and most of us here understand what referencing or citation means. That, well, if this potential applicant have cited my work, that means he's very much interested in what we are doing. Then you have to tailor your content. You tailor your content to suit the context of what you're presenting. I'll try to run more speedily so we catch up with time. So you use language that is not very vulgar. No, you keep your tone professionally and you give details that resonate with the stakeholders. Every discipline has its own registry. And we know this in common English. The way, for instance, those in Faculty of Art and Humanity, do research and the way they write is different from the way we in Faculty of Social Sciences do our research and the way we write. Same thing. If I'm speaking to an audience that is comprising of, engineering students, I'll have to use terminologies or use registry that resonate with them. So you have to know which word, for instance, which terminology resonate with your stakeholders, and don't just write everything, the way you want to. For instance, when I came to Germany for my second PhD, I realized that the way we write in Nigeria is far different from the way they write here. I had to relearn a lot of terminologies. What we look at to be just mere word, they don't look at it to be just mere word. Let me give you an example. The word diplomacy. In Nigeria, everybody just assumed that, well, it probably is a governmental, negotiation and stuff like that. But it's a complex word here. So you won't see me using that word because now I understand that if I'm speaking to maybe an audience in my institute here, I'll be careful with when I use the word diplomacy and how I use it. Freedom, for instance, democracy, for instance. These are terms that we just used, but they are not in the context. So you have to tailor your terminology contextually. Then start strong. This is important. Start strong. Capture your attention with a compelling opening. Your proposal, especially the opening sentences, have to be very compelling. It is important for you to start strong. Sometimes most evaluators just read the opening few sentences and don't care about what you've written, downward. And if it is rated good, they rate it. If the start is not strong enough or is not compelling enough, they trash it. You also have to maintain clarity. Avoid complexes. By complexes, I mean avoid unnecessary details and don't leave anything hanging. If you probably are trying to explain one thing, explain it very succinctly, precisely, and straight to the point. Avoid complexes and use simple, precise language. And I think that demystifies. Don't plagiarize. Don't copy. I understand we are coming from a background where plagiarism is very common. I lecture in the university and I know what many students do, even assignment, even their, projects, bachelor's degree project, even master's degree, even PhD. Sometimes people just pick an already completed work, remove the front and the back cover. Is that serious? And, find a way, get a typist, type their own details and come and dump it on your desk, as a lecturer. If you want to be globally competitive, you have to try to be very original. So avoid copying, acknowledge all the materials that you cite, then follow guidelines. I think I have mentioned this earlier. Stick to the requirement for any application that you're making. Usually they tell you what they want. They also tell you what they want to see. okay, we need a proposal. It should be 5-page, introduction, background, methodology, summary, etc. Or we don't need a proposal, but tell us about your research experience. And that is you being asked to explain what you want to do or what you've been doing, in the previous years. So they are all different requirements per application. So understanding this requirement and sticking to the guidelines is very important. Then be very thorough. Check what you've written thoroughly. And I do recommend that you use Turnitin, especially to check for grammar, typographical errors, etc. And probably you can also use Grammarly, because I do use that for any submission that I make, even if it is a 5-page or a 2-page or a 3-page proposal. The first thing I do after finishing writing the proposal is I check it through Turnitin to be sure of the similarity, index. I also check it through Grammarly to also correct, errors, especially grammatically, as the case may be. And because English language, which is widely used in the scientific community, is not our first language, even if it is our lingua franca, you must find a way to check, your English. Then, of course, engage a superior third party. Why I refer to this as a superior third party is because you will not want to give your proposal to someone that you are more advanced than. For instance, it is wrong for me to submit my proposal to probably my student who just finished bachelor's degree. There is no way he will be able to, review my proposal and give me constructive criticism. I can submit my proposal to Professor Imori. I cannot submit my proposal, to someone who I am a little bit above academically. So look for a superior third party, your lecturer, your senior colleague, to review your proposal and be open to accepting constructive feedback and criticism. Usually when I send my proposal for review, I tell them, please forget that we have a relationship, forget that we know each other. If it's someone that, we have met before, just review it and give me a constructive feedback. Sometimes it hurts. It bruises my ego when they send feedback that is very constructive and sometimes negative. But you have to accept it and improve. Then focus on the benefits. Align your goals, with your audience interests and the benefits. You don't want to write a proposal where you are only talking about what you want to do and how you want to do it. You also have to align your goals with what will benefit, the audience or the evaluators or the institution where you are applying to. And finally, please always revise and review. The truth is, if you have written a proposal yesterday, after this presentation, if you go back to it, you still find 2-3 errors. If you write maybe an essay now, maybe after 1 minute, 2 minutes, if you go back to that essay, you still find error. This is why it's important for you to do, a detailed review, continuous review, and of course, try to revise everything, that you've written and make sure that possible errors are minimized as best as possible. And let me also say, this is very striking, that there is no perfect proposal, kind of, but what evaluators look at is proposal that is close to excellence, close to perfection, close to, being a proposal that they can call a standard proposal. There is no academic work, including those academic work that have been used, to win Nobel laureate, that don't have one loophole or the other. If there is no loophole to academic work or research, then there will be no research after maybe the likes of the founding fathers of the knowledge that we are riding upon their wings. In social sciences, for instance, what Karl Marx did, especially his theory on, of course, capitalism, etc. If there are no loopholes, there is no way we'll have, post-capitalist thinkers, which I fall under. In chemistry or physics, what Michael Faraday did with electricity, if there are no loopholes, there is no way today we'll have, other aspects of, electricity study, thermodynamics, etc. I don't think Michael Faraday ever saw a future where we can be generating, of course, electricity other than the conventional sources that he introduced in his thesis. So there is no perfect proposal, but you can achieve an excellent proposal. Then what are the common pitfalls? I'll just run through it, then we find somewhere to summarize. Common pitfalls from my experience dealing with, of course, academic mentees and evaluating, applicant is that people procrastinate a lot and neglect what they should have done. Proposal writing, as you see in the conclusion, takes a lot of time. You have to do a lot of thinking, a lot of brainstorming. It requires you to be creative, to be innovative. And so if you don't start early, if, for instance, the funding organization calling for application says that the application will run for 3 months, and you think that you have to wait until maybe 1 month to the deadline, then you start struggling to put your ideas together, you will most likely lose that chance. So the moment you get to know that funding organization has opened, start immediately, start the thinking, start the questioning, the questioning of your mind, start, of course, the brainstorming, and do not neglect what you have to do. By that, I mean, don't put forward what you can possibly do today. The most difficult task in life is the task that is left undone. Deal with it when you have the time and the opportunity to deal with it. Then avoid errors and grammar. This is very important, grammatical errors. And in our generation where a lot of young people are no longer writing, or do not have writing as their hobby or what they are interested in. And sometimes even when they write you a message, they are using, shorthand and all those kind of stuff. Remember how we define proposal, that it is a formal writing. So you have to do away with all those informal way of communicating, because you're not communicating with your peers. You're not communicating with your contemporaries. So you avoid grammatical error to the best of, your ability. Then be logically consistent. Don't be logically incoherent. So there shouldn't be a clear distinction between your previous or penultimate paragraph and the paragraph that follows. No, there have to be that synergy. There have to be that flow of ideas. There also have to be that flow of understanding. So whoever is reading your proposal will be sure that you are logically coherent. Then don't submit a proposal that is unstructured. No. Under this unstructured, you're required to use the font size that is required or that is recommended. You're also required to use, the format of paragraphing or the format of referencing or bibliography. There are a lot of them, And so you have to stick to that. If they say use footnote, you have to use footnote. If they say don't use footnote, just give us, bibliography at the end of it. And if it is APA model, Harvard, system model, anyone, stick to that. And if you don't know how to do that referencing pattern, learn it so that you submit a proposal that is well structured, that suits the interest and, of course, the requirement of the funding organization that you're applying to, or the institution, as the case may be. And don't leave your ideas, or don't allow your ideas to be too broad. A proposal is a concise document that focuses on the essential, aspect of what your research, is about. And the next slide is how you can grade proposals. And I think this slide is important for both the experts, those who are at the middle of their career, and those who are still novel. It is important for you to know how to grade proposals, because if you haven't written a proposal before, with this guide, how to grade your own proposal, you can first and foremost grade your own proposal before you even submit it, to the evaluators. So the first point is, ask yourself, are all parts of the proposal rigorously constructed? Have you, been able to constructively write, logically write all parts of the proposal, or you still leave, or probably you still have some aspect of the proposal hanging? The second thing is, are the claims made in the proposal well-founded? Because you have to justify your claims. when you go into the research writing problem. So are they well-founded, or they are probably sentimental, or they are too vague, or they are not convincing enough? So your claims, in my field, we call it, of course, discursive argument, because I'm doing a little bit of political discourse analysis. So are your discursive argument well-founded? If you're mixing up things, for instance, we have structuralism, we have post-structuralism, we also have, of course, postmodernism, we have post-Marxist theories. So you cannot lift a theory from the structural field of thought and you're relating it with, of course, Marxism or post-Marxism. In my field, that is totally not allowed. So you have to make sure that your claims, your discursive argument are well-founded. The third thing is try to be rational, you know. So the question is the rationale for the research clear and convincing? By rationale is, of course, the objective or the reason for the research. Are they clear and convincing? And if you ask yourself that question, you read your proposal, you'll be able to answer it. Then the fourth point in terms of how to grade a proposal is the proposal well written and logically constructed? This is also very much related to the first point. Is it well written? Is it logically constructed? And a well written proposal is
Hello, I don't know.
line.
Okay.
And
Okay.
finally, does the researcher show the ability to conduct the proposed research successfully? You have to show in what you've written that you have the ability successfully. And sometimes too, 60% of what you do is independent of course, your professor or your supervisor. Your supervisor is just there to guide you. And in our
Hello, can we hear Dr. Aka? I can't hear you. I don't know if it's from my side or from his side.
I also
I think
can't hear
I
him.
can't hear it. I can't hear.
the issue is from his side. I can't
Okay,
hear him
please,
too.
please. I think I will suggest, Prof. Are you there? Maybe Prof will take over from there.
Yes, I'm here. It's a technical problem from Dr. Aka. He has just left. And perhaps it is also a reminder that we have overshot the allotted time for this presentation. So, moderator, once he comes back, please let's prompt him to round up within 2 minutes so that we will, take Q&A and move on. We have people waiting for more information for tomorrow's meeting. We have really overshot our time for today. So once Dr. Aka comes in, please let's remind him of his time.
yeah, I'm here. So
Okay, so Dr. Aka, we have overshot the allotted time for your presentation. I understand how interesting and how useful this presentation is. If you can just round up within 2 minutes and then share the slides, I think it will do us good because people have other engagements they want to rush to, and we don't want to disrupt their plans for today.
yeah, I can just conclude in the next couple of minutes.
All right, thank you very much.
Can you see my slide now or something?
Dr. Aka, we can't see your slide. Maybe you just conclude from here because we can't see anything from you. Maybe you could just give a summary from even without sharing.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised why it's not visible. Yeah, so basically, I think where I left off was when I was talking about what you need to do, to have a good proposal. I think the next slide was actually the last slide, and there was just the conclusion, just to re-emphasize that proposal writing takes time, and we need to start early and don't procrastinate and don't neglect any opportunity we have to think through and to brainstorm. And I think the last two slides is just, of course, the reference and, of course, wishing us all good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
So thank you very much, Dr. Aka, for that enlightening talk about how to craft the perfect proposal for our academic journey. Thank you very much for that. Okay, I'll give this section over to Mr. Bison to handle the Q&A for this second talk.
Thank you so much, Dollars. So quickly, we'll run through the various questions. We could see Gina Owen. Please go ahead with your question. Unmute and then ask your question because you are muted. Other people with questions, you could raise your hand or you drop it in the chat box. We'll take the questions. Okay, Mrs. Owen, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I am Reginoa from Abuja, Nigeria. A quick one. Thank you very much, Dr. Aka. I want to know what happens in a situation where you underestimate maybe your budget for the proposal. I want to know what happens at that point. Dr. Aka, are you there?
Sorry,
Yeah,
hello,
I am here.
the
Should I
questions.
go ahead and answer, or I
Did you
take
get
all
my
the questions at
when
once?
you
No, please.
underestimate? Yes. What happened at that point?
Dr. Aka,
Okay.
please take note. We will take like 3 or 4 questions, then you address them all together. So
Okay.
any other hand? Okay. Spencer Ita, go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, my question is, in which situations are we supposed to give proposal? Because I'm speaking from an undergraduate standpoint. Is it when you finish a bachelor's degree, when you're applying for a graduate school? Do you necessarily need a proposal? Then I want to know the situations where you need to write a proposal.
Okay. Any other question? We'll just check the chat box and then see. Okay, Dr. Aka, please go ahead with and address those ones.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, please just include it in this one. Someone is asking, how do I know that somebody has written a proposal with the same solutions to the gaps that is required? So you can also take this question and address the 3 at once.
Okay. Yeah, so the first question basically is from Gina Owen. Thank you. It's a very good question. What happened when you underestimate your budget? And I think I'll just respond to this straight away. In proposal writing, the budget that you include in your proposal is not fixed. If you heard me, I did mention that it's not absolute. There are, of course, chances for the budget to, be increased or for it to be reduced because prevailing circumstances do affect, research budget. You may write the proposal when maybe most of the research items or perhaps equipment, whatever you need for the research, are lesser in terms of their market value. But when you start the research proper, it could be that those research items have been increased. There is no evaluator who penalizes, an applicant who have written his or her research proposal quoting, the amount that he or she is proposing to spend in terms of the budget. So that shouldn't be a problem. There is always room for that adjustment. Sometimes when you begin the research proper, the institute can say, okay, as at the time you made this proposal, this was realistic, but now it's no longer realistic. So they can always make that adjustment. So you don't have to worry much about that. The second question from Spencer Ita, he is trying to understand when is the most ideal time, if I got him right, to write a proposal. And I think that it's because of how our educational system is in Nigeria. Otherwise, before you do your bachelor's degree project, I think we commonly call it project, that's also research. You are supposed to submit a proposal first, then defend the proposal, and if it is viable enough, then it's approved for you. And I think some departments still do that. I don't know if all the departments, especially in UNICA, still do that, or other institutions in Nigeria. So at every point that you're applying for a higher degree, for instance, or you're applying for a scholarship, you're expected to have a proposal. And let me also say that you don't need to wait until you're done with your bachelor's degree. If you are doing your bachelor's degree, you don't need to wait until you're done. You can start, writing proposals that you probably want to work on in the future. And that will help you to, prepare yourself and be ready when the opportunity comes. You know that you already have, the proposals in your deck. So you just pick it up and submit. Before I got my master's degree scholarship, including my PhD degree scholarship, both PhDs, I had written well over 400 proposals. Right now, I have a lot of proposals in my laptop. What I do is, if I'm applying for any funding, if it's a proposal I have not used, I just pick it up, revise it, and add what I need to add, discard what I need to discard, and submit it. It's very difficult for me to have the time to write proposal all afresh. The title might be a little bit different or might be adjusted, but because I have the idea already written down, it helps me. And this is also important. Always write down any idea that you have about research, no matter how haphazard it is at the point of initiation. Write it down and try as much as possible to develop it, because you don't know when you will need it. And the third question, I don't know who asked this because I wasn't on the chart at the time. But could you retrade on the question, Bison?
Okay.
Say, how do I know what?
The person is asking how he or she will know if the solution he wants to proffer has been addressed by another person in his or her.
That's where extensive reading comes in. And that's where also, of course, review of related literature also comes in. And I did mention that in my presentation. You have to read extensively. And if you read the right materials from the right sources, there is no way you won't know that maybe the solution that you thought about ab initio have already been published. And if that solution has been published, it still doesn't, or it shouldn't deter you from, still embarking on the research. All you have to do is maybe to do more like, I will call it a corollary to what has already been published, because I think many people, if not all, are much more interested in research that is very novel. What you're bringing in and what you're adding, what you're using to advance, knowledge in that field. So if you read extensively, consult a lot of materials, Google a lot, get all the materials relating to that field, you'll definitely come across maybe one or two publications, no matter how recent, that addresses, the issues of the solution that probably are connected to the outcome that you want to see in your research. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the last person will be Joe Paul. That will be a last question for this. But quickly, before Jopo asks his question, just a quick question from my side. Do we necessarily need budgeting for a proposal that you are searching for a PhD supervisor? Do we need budgeting in such a proposal? Just you address that question together with what Jopo will ask now. Jopo, please go ahead with your question. Jopo, are you there? Your hand has been up.
Yeah, thank you very much. A very good evening from Nigeria. I'm exactly at my village in Boki local government. I want to find out in terms of looking for scholarship or admission into graduate programs across the globe. What is the role of someone's first degree? Like in Nigeria, we still have the dichotomy between HND and BSc. I'm talking specifically because my first degree is HND. How do I navigate with that? And secondly, too, the second lecturer, Dr. Aka, said that he came from a biological sciences and now he is in a non-STEM area. How can some of us who now, because I am more into journalism and writing, first degree accounting, a master's in research measurement and evaluation, and PhD in view in the same research measurement and evaluation. But I still have this passion in journalism, especially investigative journalism. How do I marry all this now, considering the fact that my SST is science-oriented, my first degree is finance, and then I am into psychometrics, which is measurement and evaluation. How do I navigate along these lines? Thank you.
Dr. Aka, over to you, please.
Yeah, of course. So let me begin with your question, Emmanuel Bison. You did ask if budgeting is required when applying for a PhD position to a faculty member, maybe a professor in a faculty. I would say that in a way, it is. However, it is not absolute, because the faculty position or the faculty member, the professor in the faculty, already has a budget, because most times they get to have some research funding, maybe from the institution, broadly speaking, or from the government. So they have like a broader budget that covers every area of what they want to do. And if you have seen a faculty member or a professor who is doing something similar to what you're doing, and you're writing a proposal to him or is requesting that you should send him a proposal, you don't necessarily have to include your budget. If you know that he already has, a research, funding from maybe the government or from the institution, because your budget, regardless of how it is, will be submerged. And that's where your timeline comes in. And if you're privileged to know when his own, funding or when his own research is expected to be completed, you can tailor your timeline, of course, to also align with his own timeline. Because from my understanding, there are professors who have funding, and because they are carrying out a very huge and significant research, they recruit PhD students. Sometimes they also recruit postdoc. So that professor already has his budget, and it is the budget is submitted to maybe the funding organization that enable him to get that funding. In that instance, I don't think it's really necessary for you to submit a proposal with budget. But if it is a faculty, member that you do not know whether he has a funding for that research, and you're not privileged to the information around it, and you are very much sure that he's not the one that is going to pay you directly. Your remuneration will come from the institution that he is affiliated to. In that instance, I strongly recommended that you include a budget, because that faculty member or that professor who is going to host you will not be the one that will be the key. He's key, but he will not be the only one to decide whether you get that funding or not. Remember, he too is paid by the General Institute. So your budget will have to be seen by the institute, and the institute will have to decide whether they can pay you or not. So if you include your budget in that instance, I think it's good. But if you have the information already and you know that this faculty member or the professor already has, funding from maybe any organization, there's no point, stating the obvious, because your budget and your expenses in carrying out the research is submerged in, of course, the fund that he has already gotten. He's responsible for you, not the entire institute. But when you do not have that privilege and that privilege information, yeah, of course, you can include budgeting in your proposal. And for the latter, you can also use timeline, or research timetable, as the case may be. Then the other question from our brother, he asked two questions. The first is, of course, the intersection between HND and bachelor's degree. In my experience, I think regardless of the degree that you have, you can still apply for, of course, a postgraduate, scholarship. If you have HND, you can still use HND to apply. If you have bachelor's degree, you can still use bachelor's degree to apply. And in your case, and this is a very typical, this is a very typical and unique scenario, because you said you started with HND, then I think you advanced to getting a bachelor's, as the case may be. Right now in Nigeria, there's still that contention between HND and bachelor's, degree, that's BSc. For those who attended Polytechnic and perhaps some college of education, they are awarded HND. That dichotomy between HND and bachelor's degree is one that I understand very well. Many times people think that HND is not as superior as bachelor's degree. But if you're applying for foreign scholarship, they have a metric already that is organized. They also have a way of clearly understanding whether your grade, whether it is HND, whether it is bachelor's, meets their own, requirement, or meets their own standard or their own metrics. So your concern specifically shouldn't be about the name in terms of nomenclature of the degree that you have. It should be about whether or not that degree and the grade point that you have will meet the metric of the institution, especially speaking in the context of foreign institution, have set for you to be admitted, whether it is into a bachelor's, a master's degree or a PhD degree. So do not think that because you have HND, you cannot use that HND to apply for, of course, postgraduate, scholarship. You can, of course. And if they evaluate it and realize that you have met the credit hour requirement, you'll be given the award, in addition with other things that you probably will submit, SOP, CV, and proposal, etc. Then to address your second concern, and this is also very complex, and I understand, the perspective from where you're coming from. But let me quickly differentiate between the passion in the context of research and the passion in the context of talent exhibition. You may have talent in journalism, which is, of course, your unique passion. That could also be qualified to be your strength or your hobby or what you like doing. But you can be a researcher in STEM field, or you can be a researcher in non-STEM field, and you're pursuing a career, for instance, in journalism. In the context of what I said, when I said you need to have passion in what you want to do, is literally saying that you have to be interested in what you're doing. Because if, for instance, like you said, you have passion in journalism, but all your degrees that you just mentioned, to us, accounting, etc., there is none of them that has a nexium with journalism. So if you want to apply for a postgraduate study or a postgraduate, a scholarship, and you want to do maybe a master's in journalism or a PhD in journalism, it is a mismatch because your bachelor's degree or your master's degree, like you said, is in accounting or is in other field. I understand that in some contexts, especially in Nigeria and even in the United States, is currently being practiced. You can do what they call flipping career or flipping field of interest. In other words, you can use your, bachelor's degree or master's degree, as the case may be, in accounting and probably do what they call a crash course. I think in Nigeria, we call it postgraduate diploma. I think it's 6 months or 1 year. I don't know what the duration is. It's also obtainable in the US. Tomorrow, we have a talk. We have a talk in this same webinar on, of course, the pathway to getting, of course, the postgraduate funding in the US. I do probably hope that that will be mentioned. I think you can do a crash course where the certification that you receive after that crash course will now enable you to pursue master's or PhD outrightly in journalism without having to, do a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in journalism. But if, as it were, taking the status quo that you've just explained to us to be what is obtainable at the moment, I think there are a lot of institutions that will not see the need to admit an accountant, an accountant who has a bachelor's degree in accounting or a master's degree in accounting to a PhD that focuses essentially on journalism. And even for the crash course and the postgraduate, I think it's easy to do that at master's degree level. Because for PhD, it is more or less difficult for you to, cross carpet like that and move completely out of a field that you have no knowledge about to do a field that you're more or less passionate about. And when I did mention that, yeah, I started from biological science, it was still at the basis because my bachelor's degree, my first bachelor's degree was in biological sciences. But when I moved to social sciences, I also had to go back and take JAM, for instance. I was readmitted. So at a point, I was running 2 degrees in the University of Calabar. Whether it's accepted by University Senate or not, I do not know. But I know that at a point, when I was in my final year in biological science, I was in year 1, moving to year 2 in my second degree in the Faculty of Social Sciences, political science to be precise. So when I finished there, I was in 3rd year or so. I took JAM. And I also did, some makeup courses to be able to have the required SSCE subject, grade, because I didn't have them. I went to a complete, science school, Federal Science College at my secondary levels. That was why I started my degree in biological science. So I didn't have those required subjects, and I had to go and write GCE, to upgrade. It shows how much passion can take you, and it also shows how much, motivation can take you. It's not like I wouldn't have been successful in biological sciences. I would have, but to do everything about my career in the field of biological sciences that I am not clearly cutting for, I think maybe it wouldn't have gotten me this far. And that was why I cross-carpeted. And for me, it was, early in my career, and I took advantage of that. But for you, you also have to find out what works for you. And if you have to do a crash course to be able to get that certification to allow you to do a PhD in journalism or a master's in journalism, even if you have, background, being that you have a bachelor's degree in accounting. And I think that might help you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Aka Augustine, for this exhaustive lecture. With this, my assignment is, I'll finish my job. I will respectfully hand over to the moderator. But just to mention, moderator, we have the president of CRID here with us. So he has been here for a long time listening. So in your program, you see where you bring him in to give his speech when we conclude. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bison. Thank you very much, Dr. Akar. That was a very impactful session. Okay, since we are behind time, I am going to leave out this lot of things, and I'm going to give this time to the CRID president, Ambassador Christopher Lekan, to give us a little bit of his address for the evening.